Hi everyone, Susan Storm here. Today we're going to be exploring the ESFP personality type. We are going to talk about what makes this type tick, and we're also going to explore their cognitive functions and some signs that you are an ESFP. If you're not sure who I am, I'm an MBTI certified practitioner and the founder of a website called psychologyjunkie.com, where I've written over 1,000 articles about the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types as well as the 9 Enneagram types. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, what does ESFP stand for? If you're new to type, sometimes the letters themselves can be confusing. The E in ESFP stands for extrovert. ESFPs are extrovert. This means that their energy flows to the world around them, the world outside of them, to objects, experiences, people, projects, activities, things that are happening around them. That's what's going to get the majority of their focus. ESFPs are very action-oriented, interactive people who like to be engaged with people and things in their environment. Next, the S in ESFP stands for sensor. Sensing types have a focus on what's real, what's tangible, and what you can experience yourself. They notice the sights, sounds, and details around them very acutely. This is in contrast to the intuitive or N type, which is more interested in intangible, abstract things. Next, the F in ESFP stands for feeling. ESFPs make decisions by consulting their values. They're heart-driven people. They think about how people are going to be emotionally impacted by their decisions, how they will be emotionally impacted, and what they believe is personally right or wrong for them. And lastly, we have the P in ESFP, which stands for perceiver. Perceiving types like to have an open-ended, exploratory approach to life, rather than following a really regimented structure or a very clear sequential plan. They like to be able to be free to adapt, to be spontaneous, and to be flexible. All right, so we just scratched the surface of what it means to be an ESFP by explaining those letters. If you really want to understand the deeper mechanics of how your mind works as an ESFP, what we need to do is look at your cognitive functions. So let's go ahead and dive into the cognitive functions of the ESFP personality type. First, let's talk about the dominant function, which is called extroverted sensing, or SE for short. The dominant function is in many ways the hero of your personality type. This is the function that feels the most natural to you. It's like breathing. You don't really have to put a lot of energy or thought into it. And that function for you as an ESFP is called extroverted sensing, or SE. What is extroverted sensing? It's a focus on the sensory details and experiences around you. Extroverted sensing dominant types tend to be highly conscious of facts and details and realities in the present moment. SE is constantly scanning for reactions and for relevant data and for opportunities. If you've ever heard the term seize the day, this is the perfect saying for an ESFP personality type, because they are very focused on making the most out of each moment rather than mapping out a plan for the future or getting stuck on past memories. They're very much about making the moment count, making the day count. They quickly move to take action, to experience. They want every day to be full of new opportunities, and they want to amp up each experience to make it as immersive as possible. For example, they could have donuts while they're driving to work, or they could pull over and watch the sunrise while they eat donuts on a mountaintop. Like, how could they amp up the experience and make it that much better? This is something that ESFPs are really good at, and they can take an ordinary experience and make it fun. ESFPs love to immerse themselves in their senses. So when they're walking along the beach, they're really thinking about how the sand feels between their toes, and they're really savoring that feeling. When they have a drink of lemonade, they really savor each nuance of flavor and temperature. They notice everything about it. They're probably the first to notice if you change the way you did your hair or your style is changing. They're very conscious of details. Extroverted sensing also is very action-oriented. ESFPs love to jump into action and immediately get into the game rather than being on the sidelines watching. They hate feeling stagnant. They hate feeling stuck. They want to feel like they can immediately move and get into things. They tend to learn very well through trial and error, and they tend to be very good at multitasking. That said, they don't like being restricted. As much as they like being busy, they don't like having a giant to-do list. They don't like having a massive amount of responsibilities. They like to have flexibility and an open-ended schedule so that they can be free to act in the moment wherever they see a current opportunity. They can get a lot done if it's given to them spontaneously, but if they have a huge list looming over them of things they have to do, then they feel overwhelmed by that. I have an ESFP friend who knows how to make every moment fun. She knows how to turn everything into a game. She's amazing with kids, and she loves playing and just maxing out the moment and making it as exciting as possible. And if you have a spontaneous adventure you want to go on or some random thing you want to do, she is always up for it. So ESFPs do not have a reputation as the entertainers for nothing. Linda Behrens, who is the psychologist who studied type for many years, calls ESFPs a get things going type. Get things going types love to get everyone involved in something rather than mapping out a course for themselves. ESFPs want to get everyone's voice heard. They want everyone to be included. They want to amp up the energy and get everyone excited when it comes to a project that has to be done. They want to get the party started. They want people to want to do it. This can make them very influential in the workplace. If you have an ESFP in the workplace, they're the ones, if you want everyone to really get excited about an initiative or excited about a project, and you want everyone's on board, and you want new ideas and new perspectives, you want everyone to have a voice, and ESFP is a perfect person for that job. Next, let's talk about the ESFP's auxiliary function. The auxiliary function is one that supports and balances the dominant function. So extroverted sensing is very much about taking action, about experience in the world and all of its details, and enjoying the moment. But what happens if you just let that function completely take over the personality? You have someone who's really good at taking action and really spontaneous, but might be overly impulsive to the point of being reckless. And that's where introverted feeling comes in. As the auxiliary function, introverted feeling asks the ESFP, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right action to take? Does this action line up with my personal values? So that auxiliary second function is super important for the ESFP. It's the compass that guides them so that as they are making these quick decisions and as they are reacting to life as it happens and enjoying the moment and the thrill, they're also staying aligned with what they personally believe is right for them. Introverted feeling gets a gut feeling when something is right or wrong, and it's very concerned with what you believe is right, regardless of what society says, regardless of what other people tell you. It's very, very personal. And ESFPs are very loyal to this idea of what they think is right or wrong. And they don't believe in following other social norms or rigid rules that other people try to enforce on them unless those rules line up with their own personal values. ESFPs believe in marching to the beat of your own drum and following your heart, even if it makes you a misfit, even if it makes you an outcast, even if other people look at you funny. Every ESFP that I've known will say these stories about themselves that can leave other people laughing, but also have other people sometimes shaking their heads like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just said that. I would never say that kind of thing. Feeling judging types care about those social norms. They care about the impact of what they're saying, and they tend to tailor what they say so that it has a positive emotional impact. And they're very concerned with tactfulness and propriety and things like that, whereas introverted feeling is more concerned with authenticity and what feels genuine to the self. ESFPs, they tend to be all about being real. They hate anything that seems fake or phony. And they will say things and reveal things about themselves that sometimes other types would hold in because they're like, oh, I don't know if that fits with propriety, or I don't know if social rules would smile upon me revealing this thing about myself. ESFPs, yes, they can be very considerate and tactful, but they can also have this very real edge to them, which makes them, on one hand, very hilarious, because a lot of times the stuff that they point out is stuff that everyone feels, but people just don't say. They're often the people who point out the elephant in the room, whereas other people are like, oh, I don't know if I should talk about that, because I don't know if it's appropriate. For ESFPs, while they do care about keeping a positive, uplifting vibe around them, they get very impatient with anything that seems fake. They are the types who are going to say it like it is. This doesn't mean they just blurt out every single thing that's on their heart. Introverted feeling can be a very private function. And sometimes ESFPs need to get away from everyone else so that they can process their feelings, so they can think through what really feels right to them and how they really feel about things. Sometimes if they spend too much time engaged with other people, they can lose sight of their own personal feelings. And that can make them feel very off balance and off kilter. So it's very important that ESFPs, even though they're extroverts, get some regular time to themselves to process those feelings, to write them down, to think through what they really believe. During that alone time, they can ask themselves, am I living in accordance with what I think is right? Or am I just being led by the experience itself? And they can process their decisions and really make sure that they're doing something they can feel proud of. Introverted feeling is very much about checking in with the conscience and just making sure that, hey, do I feel, on a gut level, do I feel like I'm on the right path or not? But introverted feeling does have that individualistic quality that I am going to be who I am regardless of what you want me to be or what society tells me I should be. So ESFPs can be very outspoken in defense of people like misfits or outcasts or marginalized people because they feel like we should all be free to be ourselves and not feel like we have to be something that everyone else tells us we need to be. Next, let's look at the ESFP's tertiary function. This function is called extroverted thinking, or TE for short. Now, the tertiary function is also one that supports the dominant and auxiliary functions. However, it tends to come and go in terms of effectiveness. At moments, it can be really effective and can work really great, and other times it can be very immature or vulnerable. It's not consistent, and it does take more energy for the ESFP to use than something like extroverted sensing would. So we just talked about how introverted thinking is very much about following your heart and your conscience and your own personal sense of right and wrong. Extroverted thinking is about detaching from all those personal things and getting into what just works. What passes, what fails. It's interested in metrics, goals, objectives, and objective logic. It's about taking yourself out of the equation and just looking at the most efficient way to get something done. So ESFPs, even though they're feeling types, they can have a really strong sense of how things should be done in order to get them done quickly. They can be very effective at organizing people when the situation demands it. For example, I'm part of a homeschool group, and this homeschool group was run so inefficiently, led by good people, but no one seemed to know how to get it organized and on track and get everything running the way it should be. I have an ESFP friend who was just like, this is ridiculous. Why is this being run so inefficiently? And then I didn't have time to run the group. So I was just like, they need some more people with extroverted thinking on this team to get everyone into gear. And the ESFP took over the homeschool group and got everything organized so that people knew where they were supposed to go, they knew what they were supposed to do, so that everyone was at their classes on time. And this doesn't sound like your typical ESFP strength. We don't tend to talk about ESFPs as being really good at organizing or keeping people on task. When you read information about ESFPs, you'll often read about how they're so spontaneous, they're so fun, they're so entertaining. But when ESFPs are tapped into their tertiary function of extroverted thinking, they can be very action-oriented in getting people organized for a goal. Because extroverted sensing wants to make things happen. It wants to make the most of each moment. And when things are being run inefficiently, then the moments are being just wasted and you're causing a lot of confusion. And there's just a lot of stagnant time that's being wasted with people trying to figure out what in the world they're supposed to do. And SE, the dominant function of the ESFP, does not like that. And neither does their tertiary function of TE. Extroverted sensing likes everyone to be in action. It likes to get things going and have forward momentum. And then extroverted thinking likes everything to be moving forward in a productive, efficient way. And so ESFPs, when they decide to, can be very strong leaders, and they can be very good at organizing people to get a job done, enthusiastically as well. So they're not just focused on, let's get everyone where they need to be to get this job done, no questions asked. They also try to make it as fun as they can, and they try to get everyone's buy-in, their enthusiastic buy-in to the project that they have to do. But at other times, ESFPs struggle with extroverted thinking. They may be so focused on what they personally want to do right now, the fun that they want to have, that they don't like having to stop it all and focus on just what's logical. They don't necessarily always want to be driven by a routine or a have to, or a particular goal. They might wake up and think, my goal today is to finish all the laundry in the house. But then as they're going, they're like, actually, I could take my kids to the beach and we could have some fun and we could build sandcastles, and that becomes the new goal. And then as they're doing that, after a little while, they're like, we could go to the movies and we could watch the new Dogman movie. It could be amazing. They like to have freedom to shift gears. And so sometimes that extroverted thinking side can be pushed down so that they don't have to do necessarily what's maybe the most logical thing to do, but following their heart, their introverted feeling, the thing that they want to do, the thing that feels personally more meaningful to them. And this isn't always a bad thing. We need ESFPs in life to bring the fun and the meaning and the personal joy out of each moment. But at times this can come back to haunt them as they get home and they have this giant pile of laundry to do that they've been putting off for weeks. Other times, extroverted thinking can show up in kind of an immature way because this isn't their dominant function, the one that they live and breathe, the one that they've been practicing since they could walk, and it just feels really natural to them. When they use extroverted thinking, it sometimes can come out in this immature way. Sometimes it can come out as being a little bit too bossy, or a little bit too blunt, or a little bit too impatient. Next, let's look at the ESFP's inferior function, which is called introverted intuition, or NI for short. Introverted intuition is in many ways the antithesis to extroverted sensation, the dominant function of the ESFP. Introverted intuition is about exploring the intangible, the things that we can't experience, see, touch, smell, taste. It's about concepts, ideas, insights, premonitions, predictions, philosophies, all these things that we can't actually touch. An introverted intuitive type might be like, oh, look at the sunset in the sky. This makes me think of how small I am in the grand scheme of things, and then it makes me think about the brevity of our time on Earth, and what is our life really supposed to mean, and why are we here in the first place? Whereas an extroverted sensing type, an ESFP, might look at the sunset and be like, wow, look at all those colors, it's so beautiful, I want to draw a picture of this. Extroverted sensing is about spotting the details and then taking action on it in some way. Whereas introverted intuition is more interested in an abstract understanding of something bigger and deeper. Introverted intuition, their inferior function, is much more about looking forward rather than being in the present. And it's very much focused on finding some kind of abstract meaning more than some experiential sense of joy. Because introverted intuition is inferior for ESFPs, they tend to push it to the side, thinking of it as less important. They're more interested in maximizing the moment than they are in planning for and strategizing for some future idea. They're more interested in learning through experience and trial and error than tossing around ideas and insights in their mind in a quiet place. That said, introverted intuition is still something that ESFPs value. Because it's one of their top 4 functions, they still value it. They still have an interest in it. It just feels very exhausting for them to try to tap into for very long. If you try to talk to an ESFP about a long-term 10-year goal, for example, you might find them excited at first. Ooh, what's going to happen in the future? I'm optimistic about all these things that could happen. But then the more you try to pin down what their ideas are for the 10-year future, the more exhausted they're going to be, the more tired they're going to feel, the more unsure of everything they're going to feel. Because for an ESFP, we really don't know what's going to happen in the future. So many things could change. So why are we trying to pin down some kind of plan when everything could change and all this time has been wasted? Instead, we have this time now. We have today. Let's live as if today is our last. Let's really try to experience and enjoy the moment and the things we do have certainty of. And what we have certainty of is now. We don't have certainty about the future, and they're very aware of that. They're very aware of how everything can change very quickly. In the snap of a finger, everything can change. So they don't tend to spend a lot of time making predictions or making big strategies about the future. Instead, they really try to maximize the moment. Now, as they get older, they develop more patience with introverted intuition. But in early life, it can feel really exhausting to use. And if they're in a group of people and everyone's talking about some theoretical subjects like the meaning of life or spirituality or big political agendas and how they're going to impact the future, these kind of conversations can feel exciting for a few minutes and then very quickly feel draining. And an ESFP can feel like they're checking out and they're impatient to get up and actually do something. There's a constant hunger for action with ESFP, a constant hunger for immersion, for fun, for experience, for excitement. Talking about theoretical topics or concepts or abstract things can very quickly feel like it's just draining the life out of them. Like they're a balloon, they're ready to fly up high in the air, and then introverted intuition can sometimes feel like the pin that just pops the balloon and just lets all the air out. At the same time, introvert intuition, like I said, it's still something they value. So for bits of time, they might be interested in these deeper metaphysical or abstract subjects. You might find that an ESFP has a secret fascination with tarot cards, or with psychology, or with spirituality, or any other number of abstract concepts that they're interested in. But they tend to not really express this a whole lot because the inferior function tends to feel vulnerable. We tend to feel more insecure about our inferior function. We're afraid that as we're trying to express it to other people that we're just going to get it wrong, or it's going to sound stupid, or people are going to make fun of us, or it's just not going to come across the right way. So many of us tend to hide our inferior function. I believe it was John Beebe who said we cover up our inferior function with a persona because we are afraid of being misunderstood, we're afraid of being judged, and we're afraid of just getting it wrong. Our dominant function doesn't feel that way. Our dominant function we feel very confident of. We feel very certain in its power. And ESFP feels pretty confident acting in the moment, taking charge, making the moment fun, getting people moving towards action, getting people excited about an activity. And ESFP doesn't feel as confident talking about something abstract and conceptual and trying to predict how things are going to turn out and trying to look behind the scenes to figure out what's really going on in a situation. That's an area where they can feel a little bit more out of their depth, even if sometimes their insights are highly astute. Now, sometimes ESFPs overuse extroverted sensing to solve every problem that comes their way, and then when they experience really chronic or ongoing or extreme stress, they wear extroverted sensing out. We tend to think that our dominant function is the right hammer for all the nails. We tend to think it's the right tool for all the jobs. And so sometimes what can happen is we wear out our dominant functions, and then the dominant function essentially needs to take a nap until it can recharge again. So sometimes when this happens, introverted intuition takes the wheel. This is called grip stress. Grip stress is when you've overused your dominant function too much to try to solve ongoing stress or extreme stress, and you just overused it to the point where it needs to take a break and the inferior function takes the wheel. Now, when ESFPs go through grip stress, they tend to feel paranoid. They tend to feel like there's no hope for the future. ESFPs are usually very optimistic people, but when they're experiencing grip stress, the future can just look blank. It can look like there's no hope. It can look like there's really nothing good that's going to happen. They run out of ideas. They run out of excitement. Instead, they feel this very doom and gloom cloud weighing over them. And if you are around an ESFP who is going through grip stress, you might find that they detach more from people, they pull away from their relationships, they're more obsessed with a negative prediction of how things are going to go, they're less pragmatic, they're less focused on details, they're just lost that fun-loving, action-oriented, realistic side of themselves, and now they are detached, they're reserved, they're obsessed with some sort of horrible thing that they think is going to happen in the future, and they can't seem to pull themselves out of it. So one of the best ways to deal with that is to, first of all, take care of your physical self. Make sure that you're not dealing with physical exhaustion or hunger or thirst that's just taking you away from your normal sense of well-being. And then 2, take advantage of that state, but in a positive way, instead of just giving into that feeling that nothing good is going to happen and giving into that feeling of doom and gloom. Try to take some time to quiet your mind, to breathe deeply, to listen to a guided meditation, and try to get your mind calm and into a more peaceful Zen place as much as possible. Many ESFPs also find that it's helpful to journal, to write out their feelings, to make sense of them, or even to talk to a therapist to discuss what's really going on and get some guidance in that way. Now that we've gone over the cognitive functions of the ESFP, let's look at some signs that you are an ESFP personality type. Sign number 1, you follow your heart. More than you follow what society expects or what your parents or anyone else wants from you, you are concerned with following your heart. You don't mind going against the grain if it means you're doing what you feel is right. Sign number 2, you learn by doing. You're a very hands-on learner. You learn through trial and error. You are good at improvising and learning on the spot and rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty in the process of learning how to do something new. You'd prefer that rather than just sitting around in a classroom listening. For you, learning is very intertwined with action. Number 3, you crave autonomy. Even though you tend to be a very social person, you need to have freedom. You need to have freedom to have your own feelings and thoughts about things, as well as freedom to improvise, to follow your impulses, and to explore all that life has to offer. You really don't like being around controlling people. You don't like having a lot of rules you have to follow and a lot of really strict schedules and routines that you have to stay aligned with. Number 4, you tend to see details that others miss. As an extroverted sensing type, you're highly aware of the sights, sounds, textures, tastes, smells, everything around you. You're hyper aware of that. And so you tend to notice a lot of things that other people are completely blind to, because a lot of us go through life and we're stuck in our heads thinking about hypothetical scenarios or big ideas. But for you, you're noticing everything in your environment very quickly and with a very high attention to detail. Number 5, you live in the present. More than hypothesizing about the future or fretting about the past, you are someone who lives in the now and you want to make the most of the now. This is one of the things that makes you such an exciting person to be around, because so many of us don't stay tapped into the present. We're scrolling through our phones and worrying about what's going to happen in the future, or we're regretting some choice we made in the past. But you encourage people to let go of that and really make the most of the day that they're in, the moment they're in, the minute they're in, and see the beauty and opportunity that's available in that. And that's a really magical thing, and something that I can't overstate enough how important that is, especially in the world we have today, where so many of us just live in a constant state of distraction. So if you would like to find out more about ESFPs, you can find many more articles on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I will leave a few of those articles in the description. If you would like to ask a question about what we've been talking about today, please leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this, and subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.